changes, we'll keep you up to date. News Talk KVNU 102 FM 610 AM. Also on the new KVNU mobile app.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Roof Rescue. The preliminary hearing for a 34-year-old Price man accused of sexting with an undercover officer in Logan has been postponed as attorneys work on a possible plea deal. Richard Aldaba was arrested and charged in November 2021. Aldaba was scheduled to appear in First District Court for the preliminary hearing Wednesday afternoon. He was previously charged with 6 counts of enticing a minor by internet or text, 4 second-degree felonies, and 2 third-degree felonies. Court staff explained that the Utah Department of Corrections had been unable to transfer Aldaba, who is currently in prison on other crimes, being housed in Beaver County. Defense attorney Mike McGinnis said they had worked out a plea deal but asked for a new hearing so the defendant could appear by video conference. He did not provide any details about the agreement. According to an arrest warrant on March 16, 2021, Aldaba messaged a Logan City police officer on a social networking app called Mocospace. The officer was posing as a 12-year-old girl. As the messaging continued, Aldaba allegedly asked the officer for their phone number to exchange text messages. When the two began texting, the suspect allegedly began sending sexually explicit messages describing what he wanted to do with the supposed girl. He also expressed an interest in meeting up in person. The warrant stated that Aldaba continued to request a picture and asked the undercover officer to promise that they were not a police officer. The messaging continued into the night, but then stopped. The officer later learned that Aldaba was arrested the next day and booked into the Carbon County Jail for violating his probation. He had previously been convicted of multiple drug crimes and was later sentenced to 1 year in prison. During Wednesday's hearing, Judge Brian Cannell continued the case until June 22nd. Aldaba could face more than 15 years in prison if convicted. KVNU News Time is 5:07. KVNU weather for tonight, mostly cloudy this evening, then partly cloudy skies, much colder. Overnight low in the upper 20s. North winds 10 to 20 miles an hour this evening. Partly cloudy Friday, slight chance of snow showers in the morning, then partly sunny, a chance of rain and snow showers, and a slight chance of thunderstorms in the afternoon tomorrow. High temperature in the mid-50s. And then mostly sunny and around 60 on Saturday. It's been to 54. Right now it's 50 degrees at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Whole Tree Care. Right now is the best time to get your trees and shrubs trimmed. And you can call 760-6587. Whole Tree Care has a certified arborist and best cleanup crew around.
My name is Gloria Nadal, and I chose Roof Rescue. They exceeded my expectations because they were able to follow through with the insurance company, establish a rapport, and ultimately the insurance company took responsibility and paid for my roof to be replaced. The products that they use were top-notch. My roof is beautiful. I would recommend them over and over again. My name is Gloria Nadal, and I encourage you to choose Roof Rescue.
KVNU News Time is 5:08. The Logan City Council has continued consideration of an ordinance that would have rezoned 31 acres of land in the Ellis neighborhood to allow high-density housing. The issue will be discussed again at the council's next meeting on June 7th. The purpose of that delay is to allow the developer to work with city officials and neighborhood residents to define a right formula for mixed-use housing. Council members got an earful of negative reaction during a public hearing on the project at their regular gathering on Tuesday, one day after a meeting with the Ellis Neighborhood Council to discuss that issue. Local residents were reacting to the possibility of seeing 941 one- and two-bedroom apartments constructed on the site at 1000 West and 200 South. Project proponent Michael Jewell called that density a worst-case scenario, saying they are committed to building a mixed-use project with 60,000 to 80,000 feet of commercial space, 300 apartments, and 100 townhomes. And a U.S. senator is apologizing after getting booed and heckled for remarks she made on sexual identity during a university graduation speech. Republican Wyoming Senator Cynthia Lummis spoke at the University of Wyoming graduation last Saturday. In the speech, Lummis said human rights are derived from God, but that government seeks to redefine many of them. Lummis went on to say that even fundamental scientific truths, such as the existence of two sexes, male and female, are subject to challenge these days. The remark drew boos and heckles and prompted university officials to release statements in support of diversity. Lummis apologized in a statement Monday. KVNU News Time is 5:10. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
When news breaks, we break in. News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Ah, that's better. Trade in the stresses of building a new home for relaxation. Visionary Homes Priority is giving you a stress-free building experience. Named the best home builder in northern Utah, Visionary Homes team will guide you seamlessly through the home building process. Call today, 435-228-4702, or visit visionaryhomes.com to learn more about upcoming communities in Nibley, Logan, and Smithfield. Visionary Homes, built for living, built for you.
This is the Green Canyon High School Spring Sports Update. Boys lacrosse defeated both Mountain Crest and Bear River. Track and field competed at the BYU Invitational with over 50 schools. Mary McKenna won the javelin. The girls golf team tied for third in region. Boys tennis finished second overall in region. Zach Crane and Carson Shakespeare took first place at the region tournament in second doubles. Softball lost a close one to Skyview, but beat Logan on senior night 17-2. And Green Canyon baseball swept Logan in a 3-game series. The Green Canyon High School Spring Sports Report is brought to you by Casper's Ice Cream and Cache Valley Builders.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. I'm Jason Williams. Bill Walter here in the studio as well. Got really broad topic spanning governor's press conference today, his monthly news conference. I have some highlights for that coming up. But starting things off here, monkeypox. This is the news no one wants right now whatsoever.
And it's not a derivative of Omicron or
no.
It's not a subvariant at all.
They didn't get bored of
it's something different.
Naming all the variants of COVID-19 we've managed to create through with our own bodies. This is something different. Monkeypox is actually a cousin. I don't think that's the technical term that virologists use, but it's a cousin to smallpox. It's roughly in the same. And there's an outbreak in the United Kingdom, Portugal, Spain, a few other European countries. There was a case in Canada earlier this week, and then today, a case in the United States. What's been interesting about following this, none in Utah, by the way. I checked. But
that's good. But
the Utah Department of Health is keeping a close eye on this. Monkeypox is not new. COVID-19, one of the challenges to COVID-19 is that it was something that hadn't crossed over into the human contagion world previously. Coronaviruses have. In fact, coronaviruses do all the time, which is frightening to think about. But usually they are the crossover events. I've talked about this before. It's a great book on this if you want to read it, which I've linked to on our Facebook page. But it was actually published in 2019. Imagine being that scientist. You publish your book to try and make your area of expertise accessible, and you publish it right before the pandemic, and no one buys it. But now it's one of the top-selling books. But so he's doing okay. But there's a book that talks about this, that these coronavirus outbreaks these crossovers would happen all the time, but oftentimes it would be contained to a family or a single village. and a lot of times, one of the stories he tells is this village during a drought year, they start eating the monkeys. They don't usually do that. They usually grow most of their own food, but there's a drought, so they're running low, and some of them are actually suffering from malnutrition, and so the village starts hunting these nearby macaque monkeys and eating those, and there's a coronavirus crossover from that event, which is how we think COVID-19 started. Someone ate a bat. That is actually surprisingly common, I learned, which is scary. What made COVID-19 different is that it spread differently. We didn't know this at the start, but within a few months, it was obvious that this virus got into the air, hung in the air for a significant amount of time, therefore was highly contagious. Then we also found that it was a lot more deadly than most of the viruses we deal with in an endemic way, the ones that come around every year. So that's what made COVID-19 unique. With monkeypox, from what I've been reading, it is not new. This is something health officials know this virus. And so that is a little reassurance for those that are seeing these headlines. I know we're all touchy about this. Did you panic at all when you saw it, Bill? When you saw the headlines about monkeypox, did you think, oh, here we go again?
I guess only if I was planning on visiting a zoo.
Yeah, that's right.
Like Hogle Zoo or something later that day. But I looked at it, and it's one of those kind of like, oh, great.
Yeah, that's... Well, so one of the concerns that will seem familiar to all of us after the last couple of years is that one of the reasons health officials in all the countries where it's been detected are a little concerned is they have no idea how it's spreading. They know how monkeypox spreads. Again, the virus, unlike COVID-19, the monkeypox virus isn't new and it's similar to smallpox. But what has been difficult for them in the last couple of weeks as this outbreak has spread is that they don't know. The contact tracing that they've attempted, the knowns about people who have shown up with this. By the way, it's very fatal. It can be treated, but there's a very small window in that. And but that's what's concerning health officials throughout the world at this point, is that it's not a huge outbreak, but it's obviously hopped, from the first case, which was in Spain, I think, or Portugal, and then it showed up in Spain, in the UK, and several other European countries within a week, and now Canada and the US. So it's obviously spreading, but it remains kind of a mystery how or why. And so the biggest concern is the virus is spreading through across the planet undetected for the most part. And what that implies, at least, is that the virus has a new route of transmission, or a term we're all more familiar with is variant. That this may be some kind of a variant of the original monkeypox, which again is a well-known virus. So epidemiologist Susan Hopkins, who's the chief medical advisor of the UK Health Security Agency, where the virus was first detected, she said the outbreak, this type of outbreak is very rare and unusual. And the trouble is exactly where and how these people are acquiring their infections remains an urgent investigation, but an unanswered question. So monkeypox, again, it causes fever, body aches, enlarged lymph nodes, and eventually pox, that's the name. These painful fluid-filled blisters, usually on the face and hands. And one version of monkeypox had a 10% mortality rate. They don't know if this is a variant. That remains to be seen how deadly this one is. But they know that monkeypox before has had a 10% fatality rate. 10% of the people infected they couldn't save. So they do think that if this is a variant, there's at least a chance it's milder. And that's good news. But what they're saying, and this is, so I reached out to the Utah Department of Health. I said, I was just curious with the pandemic. Still, we're currently experiencing another surge of COVID-19 cases here in Utah. The governor talked about that today in his press conference. Said, he was one of them, actually. And he said it's concerning, but luckily this variant of the variant of the variant that we're dealing with now is a lot milder and has a hospitalization and death statistics that look at least a lot more like the common flu and colds seasons that we deal with each year. Although it does spread a lot faster and a lot more easily, it's not hospitalizing a lot of people like Delta or the original COVID-19 did. So the governor talked about that today. I reached out to the Utah Department of Health and said, is monkeypox, is this on the radar here in Utah? The answer was yes. It's concerning anytime something this serious pops up in your country or in a nearby country, but they are confident that this is one that, if it does continue to spread, would be easy to contain. It doesn't spread as easily. So don't panic is the message from all of this. But it's interesting to see people's reaction to this. As I've talked with friends and family, as this has hit the headlines over the last week, we're a little jumpy, understandably. But folks are a little jumpy out there, and it's been a wild ride for the last 2.5 years. Tragically, we're at the 1 million dead through the pandemic. Understandably, people are a little on edge when it comes to viruses. But typically, by the way, people catch monkeypox from animals almost exclusively in West Africa or Central Africa. And then the virus is imported into other countries as people travel. So person-to-person transmission isn't common. It requires actual contact with bodily fluids, similar to the HIV virus. But unlike the HIV virus, monkeypox can actually be transmitted through saliva or a cough, water droplets from a cough. So it's definitely concerning, but nothing that is likely to become a second back-to-back pandemic. So Utah Department of Health says if people want to know more about this, they actually have a primer on monkeypox because it's, again, not a new virus, and it's one that they've warned people, especially those traveling overseas, to watch out for. Some precautions you can take to make sure you don't get this and carry it home because, again, fatality rate is high on this. But it and despite the name, by the way, it doesn't actually come from monkeys. It's most often contracted by people coming into contact with monkeys, but the monkeys are carriers. They don't actually make or cause variants of the virus. They just pack it, so you can get it from the monkeys. So
they're apparently not affected by it.
No,
then.
Yeah, they're not affected by it at all, and they don't incubate the virus. So, but once it's in them, they can spread it to someone else or another animal or so. Yeah, it was first discovered in...
So don't accept anything from a monkey if they spread it.
That's right. If the monkey's acting a little too friendly, be suspicious. It's got something. It was first discovered in 1958 when there were 2 outbreaks that occurred in these colonies of monkeys that were kept for research. And that's where the name monkeypox came from because they believed this was a virus that affected the monkeys and then later discovered, though the name stuck, that it really had very little to do with the monkeys. Monkeys are carriers, but the virus is more often spread by squirrels, rats, dormice, and basically any rodent. So,
which people tend to come more in contact with than monkeys.
Yeah. So... Yeah, primarily this has to be translated or transmitted through an animal bite or contact with an animal's bodily fluids, but the virus can spread to other people through coughing and sneezing once it's in a human. So that's the concern on this. The Utah Department of Health, again, has a whole primer on this, and again, this is not a new virus. There's not going to be any wait period on how to treat it. But the problem is oftentimes those who contract the pox virus, any pox virus, don't know they have it until they've reached the stage of being in real trouble. And it does have, again, about a 10% mortality rate, which is pretty high for viruses we know about. So check it out. I've linked to what the Utah Department of Health sent me. Thanks to listeners for asking about this. But, yeah, it is a real thing. Monkeypox outbreak has now gone global, but no cause to panic on this one. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. We'll be back right after this.
Looking to reduce your fuel and monthly payment cost? Now is the time to get to Murdoch Volkswagen. Volkswagen's most popular sedan gets over 41 miles per gallon. Lease the 2022 Jetta SE for only $389 per month. With adaptive cruise control and blind spot monitoring, Murdoch VW has the car for you. The quantities are limited. Get the deals while they last. When you walk through our doors, you feel like family. At Murdoch Volkswagen in Logan or online at murdochvw.com.
Call 866-628-3065 or see dealer for complete details. Offer expires 5/31/22.
Here's Chad, the lawn doctor, with a tip for your lawn.
Just a couple tips for this summer for a healthier lawn. Raise your lawnmower blade a notch or two. Longer grass helps conserve water and fight against stress. Double check your sprinkler coverage and watering times. Then call the lawn doctor to put down a grub preventative and to try our popular new 2-service soil enrichment program.
Fertilizer, weed, and pest control. Call the lawn doctor at 753-LAWN or go to LawndoctorCashValley.com.
I've been driving trucks for a long time. Safety is my #1 priority. I know that my truck has huge blind spots. That's why I remember to check my mirrors often for smaller vehicles. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're behind the wheel, try to avoid lingering in those blind spots. It can be dangerous. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Here we come, walking down the street. We get the funniest looks from everyone we meet. Yeah, we're the monkeys, and people say we monkey around, but we're too busy singing to put anybody down.
Back to KVN News for the people. I forgot I was so invested in answering a listener's question there during the break. I forgot I had to talk when the music ended. But here I am.
#1 rule in radio: do something when the song ends. Well, especially if you're on a music station.
That's right. Yeah. Well, especially there. Yeah. This has been. We haven't talked about this on the show before, but great write up on this, courtesy of the Associated Press at CashValleyDaily.com. I first heard about this when the state treasurer, Utah state treasurer, went to a GOP Lincoln dinner, or maybe it might have been a county. It was a GOP county convention, and nothing out of the ordinary about a state Republican state treasurer speaking at Republican county conventions. Traditional. The state auditor does the same thing. John Dougal. In fact, he and the county state treasurer were traveling together to these Cedar City events. And that was the first time I ever heard the acronym ESG. And a friend of mine who's been on the show actually before talking about municipal broadband, that's his area of expertise, Jesse Harris, has been our guest before. He now lives in Cedar City. He was our guest when he was here in northern Utah and working on the adoption of municipal broadband over in Brigham City. He now lives in Cedar City, still works on municipal broadband and other projects like that. But he was tweeting. He's a Republican. He was at this convention. He was just tweeting it, just live tweeting the convention. That was the first time I ever heard of ESG, and I thought it was a little odd. The state treasurer seemed to be on kind of a rant, like just sort of an angry, going off rant. So I looked it up, and then I was even more confused because it's basically a concept. It's not even really a thing, but it's a concept that is labeled by credit market analysts as ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And then I was even more curious. And so then I started to see it pop up everywhere. And then all of a sudden, Governor Cox is talking about it. And candidates are talking about it. And it's become, I had a tendency to write this off because, all the silliness over quote unquote CRT, which once again is a legal theory taught in law schools nowhere else. But it's become this boogeyman that's, politically convenient. So that's how most boogeymen work. That parties find something to scare everybody, and then they just keep pounding on it till everybody's worked up in a froth, and then they open their wallets and vote for their candidates. I really wish we could all stop falling for this stuff. But ESG is actually a real thing that is actually happening, unlike CRT. And then I was even more curious. So finally my curiosity got to me, and I started doing some digging, and it was just coming up too often. So take a second to read this at CashValleyDaily.com. It's really interesting. And there's a huge debate we can have here about credit rating in general and how it affects states. And the current call from state leaders is that it should never be political, which is, come on. It's always been political. That's one of the things we should be criticizing about it, sure, but it's not like this is new. And some credit agencies are political in a certain direction or ideological lean. Others not so much. In the other direction, a different ideological lean. But it's always been pretty political thing. Though there are some standards, thankfully, that are in place that force these rating agencies to not be brazen about it. Because think about this. If you had a credit rating agency that had a political agenda, which, again, they all do, and they wanted to, say, promote conservative policy, they could put their thumb on the scales in their ratings of a blue state or a left-leaning state or even a purple state. Vice versa, if you had a credit rating agency that wanted to hold back a red state to promote progressive policy or even, moderately liberal policy, they could do the same and hinder the credit rating for bonding and things like that of a red state. Now, none of this is going to cause any state to shut down or have to stop construction projects, and that's why part of this is hard for me to really get that upset about or even pay attention to the people that seem really upset about it, because in the end, it's not going to make too big of a difference one way or another. But what's this all about? Again, great article by the Associated Press that we've included it on the front page there of CashValleyDaily.com, since this is coming up again and again from elected officials here in Utah. It's being derided by Republicans as a politically correct or, quote, woke movement within credit rating agencies. And again, like CRT in the right-wing activist circles, it's become the next boogeyman. And but it literally is just a method of building a rating that one credit ranking agency has landed on, which, by the way, they're private companies. They can do that. It is difficult to explain what it actually means as far as how things, but put it this way, it's these credit rating agencies are in the business of trying to predict the future, because what they're doing is saying, here's your rating based on how likely we think you are as a state to be able to pay off debt. And part of what ESG means, at least by the one rating agency that's using it, is they're factoring in things like, is your state responding seriously to climate change? Is your state responding seriously to social and civil challenges or even social and civil unrest? And the theory behind this is that those things could impact a state's economic future, which, by the way, climate change absolutely could. So I get why, this is attracting so much negative attention from Republicans, but I also don't get. I mean, when I heard the governor talk about it, it almost sounded like a confession. It was almost like the governor was saying, "Look, this credit rating agency is going to start factoring in how seriously a state is in responding to environmental challenges or climate change, how sustainable their environment is going to be 10 years from now. Will they have enough water? Is it going to be a dusty desert landscape? Are they doing anything to mitigate negative impacts on the environment or air quality or water quality?" And when the governor stood up to complain about this, it was almost like he was saying, we'll get dinged by S&P because we're not taking it seriously. I mean, I think that's the message that's actually getting out from our state leaders, that they're not intending. They're intending to jump on this bandwagon and say ESG, this sustainable investment trend, or ratings trend, is, a bad thing, and that it's going to punish red states, and maybe it will. I still say, no state's going to be punished to the point that's going to make a huge difference, but it could mean that Utah finds it a bit more difficult to bond cheaply. Maybe it costs a little more to bond. That's what ratings agencies do. Again, they're trying to predict the future with these analysis. They're trying to say, how likely is this state going to be in? So you're in a great economic position right now. How likely are you going to be there in that same good economic position in 10 years? Well, here in Utah, if we don't take seriously air quality issues, water quality issues, some of the other things we're doing to our environment, or at least in the past, if we don't take those things very seriously, in 10 years, it's not going to be that great of a place to live. 20 years, even worse. So if I'm a credit rating agency and my responsibility is to warn potential creditors of a risk, I'm absolutely factoring that in. Now, whether Utah deserves to be dinged or not is a whole different discussion, but the fact that a credit rating agency might factor in whether they're taking climate change seriously, absolutely a smart move by an agency whose job it is to try and predict the future when it comes to a state's economy. So much ado about nothing is kind of the way I first responded to this. My second response, though, is that honestly, for the Republican leaders that have complained about this the most, the state treasurer being the most vocal, Marlon Oaks, it almost sounds like a confession. It's basically them stepping up every time they can find a microphone to do so and saying, this S&P Global Ratings is going to start factoring in how seriously a state is taking climate change and environmental impact of industry in their public policy. And it's almost like the state treasurer and the governor and a bunch of others standing up and saying, well, we're going to lose points because, no, we're not taking it seriously. It's been the weirdest thing to watch. Not well thought through, I think, the response to this one here in Utah. But we'll see where it goes. Marlon Oaks, the state treasurer, actually penned a letter to S&P asking them to completely retract and do away with this analysis. By the way, Utah was rated moderately negative in terms of environmental risk due to, quote, this is from the rating, long-term challenges regarding water supply, which will remain a consistent constraint for its economy as the population continues to grow. Given pervasive drought conditions in the United States, the impact of climate change on the American West, a clear trend is developed, and Utah's economy will suffer without action. That is all true. But the state treasurer wrote a letter to S&P and said, stop it. Stop looking at these things. That letter, by the way, was co-signed by the governor, the Senate and President, Speaker of the House, and even Senator Mitt Romney jumped on that one. So, which, a little bit of irony there, Mitt Romney's company, former company, Bain Capital, they actually endorse ESG, calling it, quote, strategic, fact-based, and diligence-driven analysis for creditors at the risks over the next decade. So Romney, I'm not sure how he squared that one, but he signed the letter. Check it out. Great write-up, lengthy write-up that explains all of this, how it came from, and how it's kind of popping up in other states as well. By the way, Glenn Beck, of course, on this bandwagon, but that's maybe where you're hearing about it as well. Check it out. It's really nice piece by Sam Metz, Associated Press. You can see that at cashvalleydaily.com. That really kind of lays this out, explains it. But also, if you've never had a chance to, it kind of explains what sounds boring, I know, but the intricacies and the complexities of credit ratings in general, not for individuals, but for large corporations, for states, and even for countries. It's interesting to have a little look into that world, and it's available in this story. Again, it's at cashvalleydaily.com. I've linked to it on our Facebook page, and we'll be back after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 5:39, and the news is brought to you by the Duck Hunter. A statement today from the Utah Department of Health and Human Services based on current COVID-19 numbers in state and on trends in other areas of the country indicates Utah officials expect sustained increases in the spread of the virus over the coming weeks. The statement said that they are seeing an increase of COVID-19 across the state right now, as well as an increase in the number of people who are being hospitalized with it. The state's health department now issues weekly COVID reports each Thursday. Today's update indicates more deaths than last week, more cases, and once again a high positivity rate. During a afternoon media briefing, the chair of Intermountain Healthcare's COVID-19 Therapeutics, Dr. Brandon Webb, said that we are in a surge phase again. The health department reports the last 7 days there have been 4,504 new coronavirus cases statewide and 4 new deaths. Since the start of the pandemic, 34,595 Utahns have been hospitalized, including 348 during the last week. The current 118 patients hospitalized in Utah is 41 more than a week ago. COVID patients in ICUs grew to 18, 6 more than a week ago. The number of fully vaccinated Utahns has grown to 2,020,992, which is more than 62% of the state population. The latest update from Cache, Box Elder, and Rich counties, issued by the Bear River Health Department, shows 247 COVID deaths in the district, 131 in Box Elder County, 112 in Cache County, and 3 in Rich County. There have been almost 52,000 positive cases in northern Utah since March 2020. More than 59% of the 186,818 people in the state's 3 northern counties are fully vaccinated. Also, almost 264,000 vaccine doses have been administered in the Bear River Health Department. Recognition was given on Wednesday in Salt Lake City to Representative Dan Johnson at an award ceremony that honored outstanding performance by EMS personnel in Utah. The award speaks to some of the ongoing work of Johnson when it comes to both supporting nonprofits that provide critical services in the valley and also supporting emergency services that are crucial services provided in the state. Representative Johnson was on KVNU's For the People program on Wednesday after he was awarded the Friends of EMS Award.
I think everyone would love to have been in that room and to hear the stories of these first responders and just how heroic they are. What I've done is nothing. It just pales in comparison to some of those events. You just go, oh my gosh. And you really understand how necessary these first responders are.
For the last couple of years, Johnson has worked on getting EMS to be the same priority to arrive with law enforcement and fire when someone calls 911.
But it was never considered an essential service like fire and police. And so put together legislation so that it would be considered that. And then local entities and municipalities, they're able to choose who they want to have provide the service, the level of service that they want, and how they're going to pay for it. That's true now across the entire state.
He said in the past that's not how it was organized. Johnson also ran some legislation that took him some time to get the language right in it, but he had it ready for this past session that would be able to provide health insurance for volunteers who provide ambulance service in many Utah counties. He said they hope that it will help both to recruit and to retain volunteers. And U.S. Senator Mitt Romney on Wednesday was among Republican colleagues introducing the Student Loan Accountability Act, legislation to prohibit the Biden administration from canceling student loan debt at the expense of millions of Americans who chose to go to college or work to pay off any student debt. Despite bipartisan opposition and uncertain legal authority, the White House continues to publicly entertain the idea of canceling student loans. If the White House moves forward, this action would reportedly add up to $1.7 trillion to the national debt, further fueling inflation. It would also unfairly penalize Americans who weighed financial considerations such as affordability when making higher education decisions. Romney said in a statement that it doesn't make sense for the Biden administration to cancel nearly $2 trillion in student loan debt. The decision would not only be unfair to those who already repaid their loans or decided to pursue alternative education paths, but it would be wildly inflationary at a time of already historic inflation. KVNU News Time is 5:45.
Did you just build a home or remodel your current home? Well, if so, John at the Duct Hunter says you should have your heating ducts cleaned as soon as possible and change out to a high-quality furnace filter. The dust from construction, sawdust, drywall, and more is sitting in your duct work. Your furnace filter is probably clogged. You'd be surprised what John has found in air ducts, toys, construction debris, and rodents. Let the Duct Hunter clean the ducts today. Call for a free consultation. The Duct Hunter, 770-4813.
We are the Duct Hunter. Breathe better, save money, protect your home. We are the Duct Hunter.
KVNU weather for tonight, mostly cloudy this evening, then becoming partly cloudy, much colder. Overnight low in the upper 20s. North winds 10 to 20 miles an hour this evening. Partly cloudy Friday, slight chance of snow showers in the morning. Partly cloudy, chance of rain and snow showers. And a slight chance of thunderstorms in the afternoon. High temperature in the mid-50s with those north winds at 10 to 20 miles an hour. And then sunny and around 60 on Saturday. It's been to 54. It's 50 right now at KVNU. Don't pay for the expense of dry cleaning when you can clean your items at Mount Logan Laundry for much less. Located at 5th East, 9th North in Logan, Mount Logan Laundry has free Wi-Fi, and also at 1st East and 7th South in Brigham City. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
9 million albums, 16 million singles, worldwide, sold-out concerts across the globe. Cherry Peak Resort welcomes Daughtry. Daughtry, an incredible night under the stars with Daughtry and the Dearly Beloved Tour with special guest Blackstone Cherry. You heard it right. Multi-platinum artist Daughtry on stage at Cherry Peak Resort August 2nd. Tickets on sale at skicpr.com. Get your tickets today. Daughtry. This show will sell out. You love the music. Now hear them live. Food, fun, and incredible music August 2nd. One night only. Daughtry. Tickets on sale at skicpr.com. See you there.
Adams Wealth Advisors' entire team says, thank you, Cache Valley, for voting them the best financial planner in the Best of Northern Utah competition. Honesty and integrity is the hallmark of Adams Wealth Advisors. Let them earn your trust today.
This is Craig Adams. At Adams Wealth Advisors, we are here to help you receive peace of mind, whether you've done a lot of planning or a little planning. Count on our team at Adams Wealth Advisors for honesty, professionalism, and integrity.
Visit AdamsWealthAdvisors.com or call 752-1702 to schedule a time with an advisor today. Please see AdamsWealthAdvisors.com for more information on these recent awards.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Friday on This Morning, America's First News. Companies like Target and Walmart are rethinking how and when to raise prices even further as gas and wages climb higher. Also, finding someone better means it's hard for employers to fire people, so they're putting up with weak performers. And questions for your financial advisor in this volatile stock market. Friday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
I am one of over 40 million Americans with migraine. A migraine is not just a headache. A migraine attack can last for hours or even days, often with sensitivity to lights and sounds or nausea and vomiting. Thankfully, there is help for migraine. Learn more at headachemigraine.org. Now is the perfect time to find out if what you have may be migraine. Visit headachemigraine.org, sponsored by the Coalition for Headache and Migraine Patients.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Critics of water conservation efforts here in Utah been making some hay this week, and it's getting a lot of attention, including in other states. The criticism specifically is that Utah is we're obviously talking a lot about water conservation and our overall water picture. We're in a drought right now. That's of course brought it to the forefront. But critics say, when the drought ends, which it eventually will, well, assumedly, Utah will return to not being very serious about these things. And one organization actually said, it's great that cities, the governor talked about this during his first 500 Days event yesterday, the Utah Water Conservancy, I can't remember what they call themselves. This is a long-running group. They've been around for a long time talking about the fact that we use too much water. And they've been focused primarily on St. George, where, they use too much water. But the group said, it's great that cities are talking about doing things like removing non-functional grass. That was a big announcement that the governor made yesterday during the first 500 Days event he hosted. And he said, Cedar City, for example, is encouraging it. St. George is considering mandating. Even cities in northern Utah are considering, some sort of incentive to tear up the grass in the park strips, put something there that doesn't need to be watered. Public buildings could do the same thing. Many greenscapes around schools, for example, the grass isn't really necessary. It was there for mainly decoration. We're not talking about fields of play. We're talking about the strip of grass between the parking lot and the front door. The governor said that can go, and it will make a big difference. Several groups piped up and said, great, but not nearly enough, and the state needs to get very serious about this. The governor was a little miffed, and during his monthly news conference today, he took a few minutes to respond to this criticism on whether or not state leaders are doing enough public policy-wise to encourage what this group called real conservation, not window dressing. What the governor had to say right after this.
At Health and Wellness Center, we utilize non-pharmaceutical approaches to help patients with challenging autoimmune and thyroid conditions. And because each person is unique, we design custom care plans that focus on the individual. Our goal is to improve health, well-being, and quality of life. We work in conjunction with your prescribing physician for an optimal outcome. Call Red River Health and Wellness at 855-55-RIVER, with offices in Logan, South Jordan, Springville, and St. George.
Cache Valley. Close to it all, but just far enough away. We've always had our own way of doing things, and we're proud of it. And our transit district is paving the way to keep that spirit alive. CVTD is forging the path to help fuel the economy, from helping your neighbor get to work to clearing up the commute time traffic. We drive the economy, and CVTD drives us. Visit cvtdbus.org for service information.
Over the last year, COVID-19 vaccines helped us get back to a life that feels almost normal. But the virus is still out there, and there's still something you can do to protect yourself and those you care about most. When it comes to your health and the well-being of your family and friends, don't let your guard down. Get vaccinated and boosted for COVID-19 to keep your protection going strong. Find a location at coronavirus.utah.gov.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Wrapping up hour 2 with some highlights from Governor Cox's monthly news conference today. He was asked, are the state's efforts to conserve water or encourage water conservation too meager? Are we taking baby steps when we should be taking leaps? He was asked about food shortages, baby formula shortages, and what the state can do about that. And then the governor surprised everyone unexpectedly by going after ethanol. Here's just a bit from Governor Cox's news conference today saying we need to rethink how we're growing food in this country.
China is a huge wheat exporter, but they've also had a bad crop, and so that's going to hurt prices across the globe. I've said for many years that I think it's a mistake that we use corn for gasoline, and that's a good way of me saying I'm never running for president. It's just completely foolish that we've been doing that. That the government requires us to do that. This isn't just economics work. working. This is government mandates. So I think that that's a big mistake. And what we will see is I think we will see more farmers substituting wheat this year for other crops as prices continue to rise there. But it's important to point that out, that we are a global society, and when something happens in Europe, when something happens in China, it has impacts all over the globe, and it's going to have impacts here. At a time when inflation is already raging out of control, we're going to see food prices increase because that basic commodity is in short supply.
During the press conference, Governor Cox also asked about his first 500 days. They celebrated that yesterday. He and Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson, as well as members of his cabinet and staff, celebrating what they thought was a long list of achievements. That came up during the news conference today. In fact, the question came from rural Utah, specifically as a candidate and for the office. Governor Cox ran on someone who was going to be a voice for rural Utah. That question came up today. The question was, do you think you've successfully done that? Have you raised the voice of rural Utah? Have you brought rural Utah issues more to the forefront in the legislative session with your influence as governor, in your office and your own policy as well? Have you succeeded at being the governor of the rural parts of the state? Here's what Governor Cox had to say in response to that question.
Look, we're really proud of what's happening in rural Utah. We have seen tremendous economic growth, and our administration is committed to that. I promised that we would work on moving jobs, state government jobs, to rural Utah, and I'm pleased to say that we've been able to do that now. We're closing in on 200 jobs that we've been able to move. That may not be seem like a huge number, but in small areas, every one of those jobs is a really big deal. We've also been working with the private sector to move more jobs into rural Utah, and I'm pleased to say that is happening as well. Had an opportunity to have a conversation with Steve Neeleman last night, a prominent businessman here in the state of Utah, and his business has been very successful in expanding jobs and taking that challenge, moving them, especially in Carbon County and Price, places where the economies have been shrinking over the past several years, and moving more even high-level jobs into those areas, and finding that the work being done there is every bit as good, if not better, than the work that they've seen in other locations. And so we're proud of those partnerships that are happening, and the increased jobs that are occurring all across the state. In every county, we're seeing increased employment, increased job numbers, and decreased unemployment. We also have made significant changes to our Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity around the rural programs. We used to have almost a dozen or more rural programs to try to incentivize job creation, bring jobs there, help people get better employed. It was so confusing that nobody knew how to do it, and it really wasn't making a difference. So what we've done is we've consolidated those programs, pared them back significantly, and increased significantly the ability of the Office of Economic Opportunity, or Go Utah, to incentivize jobs in rural places.
And the governor today was also asked about water. The question was, after this was in the news recently, Utah making a big deal, several Utah cities making a big deal out of their efforts to remove, quote-unquote, non-functional grass, park strips, grass around public buildings, and things like that serves no purpose other than that was the popular decoration at the time the building was constructed, and we've just kept watering it since. Cedar City has been encouraging this. St. George is considering mandating this. It's also going to come up even here in northern Utah. But critics have said this is window dressing, that Utah needs to do a lot more. Utahns need to do a lot more to conserve water, to be realistic about the future of our state and the state's economy. The governor was asked today, do you agree? Do you feel that our efforts so far have been too meager?
Thanks for the question, and we're really excited about that project that's happening. And those, I will say, Washington County alone is going to save about 4 million gallons of water annually just with this one project that they're working on.
That was the governor's response, and the response was basically that, no. I don't feel that it's been too meager. There's obviously a lot more we can do. But the governor said we shouldn't scoff at every little bit anyone can do to reduce our water consumption here in the state of Utah. So the governor firing back at some of these critics, saying, yeah, sure, we've got a lot more to do and a lot more to do soon, but don't scoff at what we're doing right now. Fair response from the governor. Full thing you can watch linked on our Facebook page. Dave Ramsey